What's up? Good to be here. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Too bad, Dan. For a minute, you totally fooled me. I thought that was legit, like your synth room or something.
No, this is the Qobuz server room back here behind me. It's a little bit less advanced than some other companies, but it does the trick. Um, no, it's that's actually ENIAC, which was one of the very first computers, like in the 1940s. It's tubes and uh, but that's my sense of humor.
How far we've come with these little pocket devices, huh?
Exactly. That computer in the picture behind me probably couldn't, do an algebra problem.
And is Matt in the room, or I can't see Matt right now?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is. What's up, Matt? How you doing,
Yeah,
dude?
good. How are you?
Too bad.
Uh,
Audio innovations. I mean, you have the word audio in your name there with Audiobridge. I mean, for those who aren't familiar, why don't you just all of us do just give a little refresher as to where we're coming from.
yeah, sure. So Audiobridge is a mobile music recording and collaboration platform. To put it as simple as I can, we're striving to be as simple as voice memos, but more powerful than Pro Tools. And we've gotten some pretty good traction. We're growing pretty well over the last year and a half. And then in the last month, I think 25% of our traffic lifetime has come in the last month and a half. It just took off with all this stuff happening. So, you know, we're moving in the direction of, we really believe that everything is going to be mobile.
Mm.
I think that all the problem really is that, you know, musicians are still having to rely on like super complex, outdated software. That a lot of these things can be solved and made simpler with, modern recording, modern software techniques. And I come from both sides. I was a professional musician in LA for 10 years, session guitar player, songwriter, performer. And then since leaving LA, I started a software company, which is still running today. For the last 8 years, we've got 10 people over there building custom software for businesses around the world. So I've kind of seen both sides of it, and I've seen how software can like vastly improve it. And frankly, I'm super disappointed in music tech in the space for not innovating on this at this point. That's kind of where this came from. Is I just assumed for years that someone was going to do it, and nobody stepped up to do it. Nobody's really done a good job of trying to actually push the ball forward. And so I took it upon myself to jump in, and so far so good. I mean, we're direct to consumer app, and so far we've gotten really great, you know, feedback, and we're always trying to improve. So we have a long way to go, but so far so good.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, in terms of no one doing it, defining it a bit more. I mean, are you literally talking about taking what we know as digital audio workstations, the Logics, the Abletons, and whatnot, and compartmentalizing that into a mobile experience for not just collaboration, but for full creative suites?
Everything, yeah. I mean, going end to end from your mobile device, and it feels like a lot of those platforms, you know, direct to consumer applications are a unique thing in the music tech space. I mean, I would say it seems like 1% are actually worried about the artist. I mean, making music, who's creating music are the musicians. And I feel like 99% of the startups and the people coming out are not focused on the user's end experience for actually creating the product that ultimately, you know, gets distributed in the space. And I think that's, I think the user experience really lacks, you know, in Pro Tools and GarageBand and Logic. And it's like nobody's thinking about how users are using things. They're thinking about how people have done it and trying to sort of incrementally change that rather than sort of start over and go, okay, where are we at now, and how can we make this an experience where more people can be creative, more people can create music, leveraging what's out there to actually like put more music into the world and give people more tools to have an outlet, you know.
Fascinating. I definitely want to come back to that. Before that, Dan, just real quick, give the folks in the room a bit more background as to where you're coming from in terms of the audio space.
Qobuz, you said it right. Actually, it's it's a streaming service. Actually, we're a lossless and high-res streaming service and download store. It's a French company. It's been operating in Europe for a number of years, but we just launched in the U.S. last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's how best to say it. It's for the 1% of the audience that cares about sound quality. You know, as everybody knows, Spotify at best is a 320 kilobit per second MP3.
Mhm.
Most recording in commercial studio. I don't know enough about Audiobridge to say anything about it, but in a studio, they're recording in a 24-bit environment, 24-bit, 48, 2496 or higher, which gives the recording engineers tons more headroom to do what they need to do. And the innovation here is that really for the first time, it's, just the last couple of years, that the end user, the listener, can actually hear that same audio quality with no compression.
Mhm.
So there's a handful of companies that offer lossless audio streaming. It's a very, select brotherhood that's most recently been joined by Amazon. We've got Amazon HD, which is a lossless 16-bit audio CD quality. That's 1411 kilobits per second compared to Spotify's 320 kilobits per second. Then when you go to high res 24-bit audio, you could get over 9,000 kilobits per second. So you're talking about a lot more headroom and a lot more potential for all those details that may be in the original master to come through. So most people don't care, granted. Probably right now, 99.99% of the audience doesn't know and doesn't care. And if they knew, a lot of them wouldn't care. But some of them might. If 1% of them care, and that's a huge amount of listeners for a small company like ours. Amazon is doing what they're doing. Deezer has a lossless tier. Tidal has lossless and something called MQA. But what Qobuz streams is a native 16 or 24-bit FLAC file. Audiophiles have been buying these albums in high-res FLAC formats for a number of years. 25, 30 bucks an album as a download for high-res. And now it's available to, any Tom, Dick, and Harry for 30 days for free. Because it's a streaming service. We've got 50 million tracks. It's mostly the same music that you've got on Spotify and other mainstream streaming services, but at minimum it's in a lossless CD quality format. And if it's been recorded or properly remastered in high res, we've got up to 24:192 resolution, if you know what that is. But that's the core of it is it's an audiophile streaming service, and we really focus on, we've got the full catalog, but a big focus on the music that audiophiles are into. So tons of jazz, classical soundtracks, experimental, electronic, and all these, genres that are other than top 40.
Totally. So it's interesting because that concept has been around, obviously for a little bit in terms of the high res streaming and whatnot. But I mean, do you think the play now is to, you said if only people knew, and of course everyone here can agree, like once you hear it in like really nice, amplifier powered headphones, you definitely notice a difference. But is the goal to educate and convince, or have we kind of given up on that now? It's more like, all right, let's just find the audiophiles at this point and maybe expand that. Even look at something like Tidal. I think, in my opinion, Tidal was the most mainstream push one could possibly get. You got someone like Jay-Z, Deadmau5, all these early, lack of a better term, influencers saying, yeah, you guys should care about, higher quality sound. And a lot of people are like, nah, I'm good.
Then they found out most people don't. Well, the fact of the matter is I know all the audiophiles by name already after a year and a half of doing this. I'm kidding. Audiophiles, as they're currently defined, maybe 1 million people worldwide. Maybe. That's optimistic. It's not a lot of people. But what I do think is the time for education actually has kind of finally arrived, because we've got the bandwidth for people to stream high res now. 5 years ago, in most homes, you probably had a couple of megs internet.
Sure.
And now 20 megs is the average across the entire country. Many of us have gigabit internet, so that's not a problem. And the hardware that you need to really enjoy lossless and high-res music is becoming more and more affordable.
Totally.
Bluetooth will never do full high-res, but Bluetooth aptX HD does almost, you know, 1,000 kilobits per second streaming. So there's audio quality that people, you know, some portion of them would want it if they knew it was there. So it's on us to educate them now.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring it back, I mean, I don't know, you don't have to say obviously specifics or anything. We're not comfortable, but in terms of, you know, compared to other streaming services that have always been, you know, not looked upon favorably for their payouts to artists, which side of the fence you're on that in terms of if it's fair is irrelevant, but can you speak to anything as to what your guys' services does in terms of compensation for artists, since people are probably paying a premium for these, since the artists themselves are putting so much time into making the mix sound what it is, and now finally people are appreciating it. In other words, they're getting more value from the song. Is there more value going back to the artist?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say that we've reinvented the business model and solved all the music business's problems with streaming. And we haven't. I mean, the basic business model is the one that the major labels established for streaming, which is a big pot revenue share, payout based on your market share. So we've got the same kind of deals with labels and distributors. But the difference with Qobuz is instead of a race to the bottom on the price, you know, right now in the US, it's $15 a month. So the pot is proportionally bigger because we charge more. The music is worth more in this quality and we charge more. So, you know, in theory, in our small way, we're trying to push against the idea that it shouldn't cost anything, and, you know, people are not willing to pay more for something better. Then the other piece of it, I mentioned, we do have a download store, and we sell high-res and lossless downloads, and we really push that and are continuing to market and try and grow that business. As downloads overall diminish, there is still a segment of the market that wants them, is willing to pay for them, and everybody knows that, you know, the artists, in theory, everybody makes more when a download is purchased.
Sure. And so, to this day, I'm still surprised whenever I see like an Amazon or an iTunes download or a Bandcamp. I'm like, really? Who are you people?
yeah, but they do want them, and we push it. And that's, you know, from a consumer standpoint, you know, if you're concerned about supporting artists and you listen to music on streaming, you know, buying albums, whether it's on CD or download, in addition to streaming, is always a good way to try and get some more value back to the artists, the same way buying a t-shirt or a concert ticket when that was a thing.
That was a thing. But on that note, back to you, Matt, real quick. I mean, just to kind of couple the idea of the value, you know, going back to the artist, you briefly mentioned upon it in terms of something that you experienced, like just from being a musician inherently. Where are the other opportunities within audio innovation that actually does translate back to the artist? An obvious one, of course, is like we just talked about: higher quality music, higher quality streaming, higher quality payouts, etc. Anything else that you can kind of think of besides obviously what you're doing, but even feel free to mention what you're doing too.
Yeah. And first off, before I get into that, I want to say, Dan, that's awesome. I remember I have vivid experiences being in the studio, finishing an album and sitting there with the monitors on either side and just listening to something over and over again, because I knew this is the last time I'm going to hear it this rich. And, you know, to get closer to that experience in the real world, it's, you know, going to take bandwidth, hardware, software. It's like an inflection point of them all coming together, the timing being right, and then it happening. It feels like we're closer than ever. So I just want to say, I think it's really cool what you're doing. I mean, a lot of people haven't experienced music in the way that people that have been in studios with high quality, you know, hardware and just good mixes have experienced it. And so it's a really unique and special experience for people. So looking forward to seeing that become more prevalent in the world.
Me too.
Yeah. But then to get back to, you know, the question here is that I think, you know, I was on a panel at NAMM about 5G and the future of mobile music collaboration. I think that innovations to kind of go back to bandwidth and sort of network connectivity, you know, a big part of our platform that people use is a collaboration, and being able to remotely collaborate on sessions from anywhere in the world together. You know, audio quality is a sort of a problem to be solved still in that space, because the higher the quality of the file, the more degraded the user experience is going to be. And if we're trying to appeal to a large audience, you know, they don't have a big attention span. I mean, and when I say that, I mean like the difference between 2 seconds and 10 seconds in an app, a process happening makes something feel clunky. Totally. And so you talk about just between like a wave and an MP3, it's a 12 times compression, I guess, I think, between wave and MP3. And then you get further beyond that, you're talking about like, it takes much longer for these processes to happen. But the reality is, everybody's familiar with their devices and being able to make content from their mobile devices. And so it's like we want to create the highest quality experience in the way that people are already using their devices. It's kind of like what I was saying at the beginning. It's fine that people have done things a certain way for 20 years, but I think it's time to sort of clear the deck and go, okay, well, how are people using devices and using technology now? And can we reinvent the way that people are doing it? And that's why.
Real quick, I said what you've examined. Yeah. How are people using them today in terms of your approach?
Well, you know, I look at it on a macro level, not just music creation. I look at it, I mean, people are using their phones. I mean, if you want to make it super simple, right?
Yeah.
And yes, GarageBand is on mobile, but Pro Tools is on mobile, Logic's not on mobile. And I get it. I get the argument that they're not appealing toward the you know, pro audio person, but the technology is there. There are ways to do this. And I think that we, you know, take user experience very seriously. It's like we're sacred on it. We want to keep it as simple as possible because we understand why a lot of this software is super complicated is because there's so many different things you could be doing. It's so many different possibilities, so many different things people want. And what we found is that the way to do this and to keep it as simple as possible, keep it as simple as voice memos, but more powerful than Pro Tools is automation. There's, you know, AI and machine learning, not to use the buzzword, but these tools didn't exist 5 years ago in the way that they do now. They weren't as accessible. You can do on-device machine learning now with Apple. I mean, these things make the experience more rich. You can automate a lot of the processes that are tedious in the studio that people are doing. I mean, the thing I always talk about is like when I'm in a studio with an engineer or producer, I mean, there's a million options in Pro Tools. I've been doing this for years and years. A lot of those options I've never seen an engineer or producer open up once. So why are they there? Because somebody's using them somewhere, and you know, I don't know, but I'm guessing they kept it there because they want to keep it as backwards compatible as possible. And I even talked to somebody in the field, and they were saying that these, you know, companies that did, you know, their audio in the let's say early 90s, big enterprise clients, they need to be able to pull it up, not have to go dig a early 90s version of Pro Tools and load it up and do it whatever. You know, it's like there's issues now where you're having these big companies are stuck for many different reasons. And so I think at the end of the day, I go, okay, that's fine, but we're here for the user. We're here for the musician. How do we you know, open that world up to people that are familiar with their phones, familiar with how they do things nowadays, and really like kind of push this ball forward, because I feel like nobody's really challenging it. So.
Well, I'm curious to the people who are embracing it. Can you speak to the demographic, whether it's an age group or a certain genre? I mean, who are these people who are like, I get it, Audiobridge is the kind of the way I want to be doing things?
Yeah, you know, there's really two. I mean, I think there's two groups, I guess I'll say. Is one is the hip hop community, and that's obvious to me because, you know, hip hop has been innovative since the beginning. They just figure out ways to do things.
Always the first.
They're always the first, right? And you need a beat and you need to record a nice vocal and you got it. And they can do that. And so to me, that's really encouraging, because if hip hop's embracing it, they seem to embrace things that are going to be the future. And so that to me is really encouraging. The other are, you know, country singer, songwriter, people that are familiar with kind of this process already. I mean, we do have a challenge in front of us, you know, like, you know, there's a lot of questions. How do you record a full drum kit on your mobile phone?
Yeah,
how do you do these things?
Totally. The next logical question there is what's the, no pun intended, but what's the bridge in terms of hardware? You know, like how do you actually get the stuff to bring with you? I mean, how do I bring a decent mic to record all this stuff into it, you know?
Yeah. So the short answer is that, you know, we're trying to be a platform and work with the companies in the space that are reinventing that, because there's amazing companies. Shure Microphones, Blue, IK Multimedia, Line 6, all of them are coming out with mobile microphones, mobile interfaces where you can plug your guitar right into your phone. That are small. They're like this big. It's not like this big clunky thing. And so, you know, for us, it's like we're probably at this point not going to create a better piece of hardware, a better microphone than Shure is going to create. They've got, you know, they're one of the top manufacturers. But let's work with them, because there's a lot of great innovation happening in the space, and it really feels like people are sleeping on it. You know, we partner with IK Multimedia, and they're great. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They do the iRig, which is like it's basically a 1/4 inch to lightning. You can plug your guitar into your phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to them at one point, and they released it a couple years back when they first released it, thinking, oh, this will be a fun little thing. That thing took off way bigger than they thought. There was like a huge hunger and demand for this type of tool. And it goes to show that people are wanting it. There's just not been a software platform that's been able to facilitate all this.
Yeah. So back to both of you guys actually on this point, the format always, dictates how the music's coming out, obviously. But I'm just kind of curious to know, like, what do you guys predict how this will affect the kinds of music people will actually put out? Will it be more on the fly? Will it be shorter length? Will it be more frequently? Will it be more, I don't know, be more interesting in terms of collaboration, since you can just go meet someone and literally be like, hold on, let's record something, like more spontaneous stuff. What are your kind of projections based on the format that you're now kind of exhibiting here as to how that's going to affect the music we're going to hear?
You want to jump in, Dan? I've been talking for a little while here. So.
Sure. I mean, I think that, we've already seen that, people, the music people are making has adjusted really to, the way it's consumed on a Spotify or whatever. Remember when pop songs used to have intros? Remember when there used to be an intro? Not anymore. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. That used to be kind of like, extreme. And shorter songs and shorter albums and all these things that, have, happened over the last couple of years as the way people listen to music has changed. So certainly the way people, are actually, creative people, which I'm not, think about, who they're trying to reach and how they're going to reach them. It changes things. I mean, listen, my daughter has discovered some great music on TikTok. I mean, I'm sad to say, actually some stuff I was like, God, that sounds like good music. Where is she finding this? That's, where the kids are going. And I don't purport to speak for the kids anymore. I could fake it for a long time, but not anymore. So, at the same time, at a different end and more in Qobuz's area of the music business, where we've got, incredible classical recordings and jazz recordings being made, and just the ability of, engineers and producers and musicians to use the technology available to them with today's digital recording to create, incredible sounding music. And now that there are platforms for an end user to hear it, like a Qobuz, where you can listen in high res, I mean, that inspires those creators to push those kind of limits. So I think, it's always gonna influence the art. The technology will always influence the art.
Totally. You hit on a great, you handed me a softball that I'm going to hand right back over to Matt right now, in terms of like what I was thinking, especially as a digital marketer myself. Matt, something like you're talking about seems prime for social media content, particularly like playing to the formats of TikTok, to the formats of Instagram stories, perhaps. Like, does one really, to build a music career, think about it. Do you even really need to post anything to Spotify at this point? You could really utilize social media channels to build what we're calling a music career, as music still being the principal product, but must you go through the traditional routes and something like mobile optimized production? You don't need, well, frankly, what I got in front of me, you don't need all this stuff potentially, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and maybe a lot of you know this already, but I constantly been thinking about this lately and sort of reading a lot of books. And, an interesting concept is, a lot of people think that sort of the music dictates the technology, but it's really been, at least the format, but it's really been the opposite from everything that I understand. Like the original 78 RPM records, we're at 3 minutes aside. That's why it's not that the human brain is conditioned to have 3 minutes of attention. It's because 78s were 3 minutes long. Right. And so even classical music was creating 78s. And then you had the 33 RPM, which is side A, side B. So people started creating albums with a vibe on side A and side B. And then the CD was like, now you're a full length thing. And now social media is like, okay, well, you got a minute video. And there's this song that on TikTok, this like, God, I'm going to butcher it. It's something about like, it's a 22 or something. It's like this whole like song that's on all these videos, and I know this snippet of the song, and it's really catchy. And like, I don't know the rest of the song, and I don't care. It's like, in my opinion, that's a hit song because everybody knows that song, that 15-second clip of that song. So, for me, I'm not trying to. I understand that every generation sort of has their, I loved it the way that it used to be, and I could totally do that because I grew up on old Beatles records and all that kind of, and even like Nirvana and stuff like that, where it was a 3-minute song. But I do absolutely recognize that technology is changing the way that we're consuming this stuff. So you know, what we want to do is like, I mean, I think what I'm really excited about, especially with Audiobridge, is people are going to be creating on our platform. And so we're going to listen as much as we can and try and not try to dictate the way that people are being creative, but create a platform where people are creative in the ways that they like to be, and then help sort of move them along in that way. I mean, to me, that's the most exciting thing about something like Audiobridge, is that we're creating somewhat of an open platform that we can then work with the creators and see the trends rather than try to create the trends ourselves. And I'm just really fascinated and curious to see how things, you know, progress over the next, you know,
Love
couple of
that.
years.
Super dope, dude. As we're rounding this one up, you guys, since you're both, you know, literally with your ears to the ground, no pun intended again. When it comes to this sort of stuff, if there were other people to join us on this virtual panel, like who are some other people in this space who are doing something exciting in the audio innovation space that, you know, you would love to have a dinner with potentially, or something? Someone else who is, you know, of the like-minded of pushing audio innovation. Who are some other exciting companies? They can be big ones too. You mentioned Line and Shure and a few others.
Yep.
Who are some interesting companies right now who are really pushing the needle, pushing the envelope when it comes to this? Let's go to Dan real quick to start this one.
Well, you know, one that I'm kind of excited about, it's not like a new name and it's a huge name, but Dolby Atmos with Dolby Atmos Music. You know, it's an immersive audio technology that actually works. I heard a great demo at CES, and you know, I'm trying to figure out how we can integrate Dolby Atmos music into Qobuz. It is available on Amazon right now, but I just think that you know, people have gotten used to the idea of you know, an immersive audio experience and surround sound and the kind of technology to do that without having to have you know, a million speakers has gotten really good. It's finally getting good so that it works, and I think that's really cool. And you know, I'm also interested in you know, new music discovery platforms, and I had something in mind and it just slipped my head, so I'm gonna pass it over. I try to remember the other thing I was thinking of.
Let us know if you think of it. Matt, who are some exciting people or companies that are pushing the envelope in this space?
You know, it's interesting, and I said this in the beginning, not to sound snarky, but I've been disappointed in the space, if I'm being perfectly honest. I know it's controversial to say maybe, especially in this forum, but I would love to see it pushed more. I don't see a lot of things being, at least in our space. You know, I don't know everybody, so don't get me wrong. You know, I'm way more fascinated in the people that are doing, you know, AI at Tesla and pushing that kind of software forward. I think the tech space, the people that are doing pure high tech, is really exciting to me, and figuring out how those applications can be applied to, you know, creation on the music side. You know, it's a hard question. I mean, I think that I just want to. I think that the reason I say that I'm disappointed is that, like, we're creatives. The space is full of creatives.
Sure.
And it's not that we don't have the creative power amongst all of us. It's that something in this system, in the music tech space, is hindering it. It feels like it's being like caged or something like that. There's not a lot of, you know, not a lot of space to take risks, to take big risks. I mean, there's incremental changes here and there, but to take big risks and see where the world's going to be in 10 years and try to push it forward even further like that. So I struggle with that question because of that. I don't think that the creativity and the talent's not there. It's just hard to see right now, in my opinion. So, you know, I don't know. Again, I'm just trying to be as honest as possible here, because I want to see I want to see it happen for sure. It's like, I'm excited because I think there's creativity. It's just I don't know where that is right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, you guys, it was a 30-minute brief session. April Eileen, I think is her name here in the chat. We need to find out how to make music in space. It would be interesting with the lack of oxygen.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That kind of stuff.
Talk about an inspiring setting, so to speak. But that's going to wrap it up for sure. So Matt and Dan, thank you so much for joining us on this one. Links to their companies, I'm sure, are on the NOLA MusicTech website, so check those out. And again, enjoy the rest of the conference, everyone. Thanks for joining us.